Welcome everyone. Bienvenue, bon dia, dobrý den. My name is Xuanming, and together with Ilva, Neo, Gustavo, my co-founders of IGNITE, a very warm welcome to yet another episode of IGNITE's What Is series, a part of our IGNITE's Knowledge campaign. For those of you who are new to IGNITE, allow me to provide a brief introduction. IGNITE is a family of international experts and enthusiasts with a passion and desire to make a positive difference in the world. We provide specialized consultancy and operational services in combination with active and integrated support of project delivery. We are strong advocates and believers of education, with it being one of our pillars. And a large part of education and growth is, of course, knowledge sharing, which is vital to the continued innovation and revitalization of our current policies and processes. It allows evolution, it promotes this multifaceted thinking, while also sparking curiosity and empowering those who would learn. We launched our What Is series to serve as a source of information to future as well as established professionals alike. So the idea of the Olympic Village came from the father of the modern Olympics himself, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, but it did not catch on until perhaps the 1920s. Before that, those taking part did not live in an Olympic village, but in hotel accommodation around the host city. Nowadays, accommodations for athletes and their entourage is a high priority. But what does it take to accommodate this population living in this single location or in two villages, for example? One that accounts for their needs, their security, their performance, and their experience as well. How many rooms are required for a single delegation? What facilities and services are required to support them? To help us answer these questions in this episode of What is Village Allotment, we will be joined by two igniters who are experts in this field, Irina Paniushkina and Paula Andrade. Between the both of them, they have successfully solved the biggest jigsaw puzzle in the recent 2 Summer Olympic Games, 2 Winter Olympic Games, but wait, there's more, and the Summer Youth Olympic Games in Buenos Aires. Paula currently serves as the Allotment Senior Manager for the villages at the Tokyo Organizing Committee of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. She began in the world of sport events with the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil, proceeding then to the 2016 Rio Olympic and Paralympic Games, the Islamic Solidarity Games, and the Buenos Aires 2018 Youth Olympic Games. My co-founder, Gustavo, writes very glowingly of Paula to me. He says that Paula is incredibly focused. She not only brings extreme competence to reach the objectives, but at the same time is incredibly skillful when dealing with the clients who easily recognize her knowledge and professionalism, therefore quickly earning their respect. After 7 years in the hospitality industry, Irina joined the Sochi 2014 Games and Olympics and Paralympics Organizing Committee. Thereafter, she moved on to work in the organizing committees of the Rio 2016 and Pyeongchang 2018 Olympic and Paralympic Games, Ashgabat 2017 Asian Indoor and Martial Arts Games, and the 2018 FIFA World Cup. Currently, she is consulting for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games Organizing Committee. Having worked with Irina before, I can say that Irina is a solid rock, a source of absolute calm in the storm. The team that she gathers and nurtures around her is always passionate, interested, service-oriented, adaptable, and warm. But enough nonsense from me. Irina, Paula, please, can you lead us into this puzzling and beautiful world of village allotment? I'll go ahead and put your presentation on and hand it over completely to you.
Thank you, Ming, for your introduction. Thank you, everybody, to watching us. We are really pleased to be here and starting this presentation to let you guys know exactly what Village Allotment is.
Great. Hello. So thank you for your time. So I'm happy to be with my friend and my colleague, Paula. And I hope we will give you some interesting information and facts. So welcome.
So let's start. We will be studying right now, just basically with our agenda for the day. We will study about the allotment process, following by the building blocks, stakeholders, timeline, and the reflections. Right now, we need to understand what is the Athletes Village. So Athletes Villages, and it's where we provide a house for all eligible athletes and team officials for the period of the games. It operates 24 hours per day, secured from general public, media, and provided services for all residents. But well, this definition says a lot, but not everything that we actually cover. The village, the Athletes Village, we cover different things. It's like a small town. Imagine that you're living in the Athletes Village and you require daily services. You require some basic needs to be able to live there for a long time of period. Remember, the Olympics doesn't take one day. It's in Paralympic Games. They take few weeks, and you still have to manage these few weeks and be able to accommodate as the best as their needs in order for them to well perform during their competitions. So in the village, we have services such as the dining hall, fitness center. Also, we will be able to have a polyclinic where they'll support the athletes during their needs of physical and medical treatments. So therefore, the village is not only a space that the athletes reside and they sleep, but also a kind of small town. They spend the time during the Olympic Games and they have to feel safe and comfortable to be able to reside and compete well during the competitions. But what exactly allotment do? So as an understanding for the allotment, as an overview, we work together with the NOCs and assigning their spaces, housing, medical, and also operational spaces for the competing Olympic and Paralympic delegations. What does that mean? So basically, each country, they are entitled, based on their delegation side, to receive a space in the village, and not only residential spaces, but also operational spaces to support their delegation. So we will locate them in the buildings, residential buildings, based on their delegation size. But one thing that allotment do, and actually everybody thinks we all know exactly all the details, where everybody stays. We do, and all of us do, apartment, exactly which number of beds we allocated, bedrooms, and so on. But different from what everybody thinks, we don't work with rooming lists. We don't manage where exactly which athlete, which team official will be sleeping in exactly which bedroom. This is managed by each NOC and NPC. So, as an example, we didn't know where Usain Bolt in Rio stayed in a village, although he was actually very active in his balcony, showing himself to all of people that were living in the village. So that was actually a good opportunity to know, okay, Usain Bolt's staying there, but not necessarily is what we do. We don't know exactly where the athletes stay.
Yes, that's true. That's funny because he was actually waving from his balcony, so everybody could find out. But Paula, I think it's actually, we shouldn't be saying it to the public. I think everybody, when they think we know where all athletes are staying, we feel like more important. But yes, you're right. Exactly. So look, so as Paula mentioned, based on the delegation size, each NOC or NPC, each delegation receives the bedrooms, right? The beds, so where they actually sleep. But besides that, we have a list of spaces that also each delegation, depending on the size, receives. So there's for example, bedrooms, social spaces, right? Then we have medical or massage cabinets. Of course, we have offices where each delegation administrative part is running the administrative part of the games, right? So team offices, so including, for example, chef de mission office, chef de mission room. So then, of course, meeting spaces where the sports or the delegation where they meet. It could be it could be dedicated, or it could be also bookable options. So besides that, each delegation brings a lot of stuff in the village. So let's say uniform, some other equipment that supports the operations and where they have to keep it all. So then we speak about storages and workshops. So athletes lounges, those spaces are each NOC is entitled to create themselves if they wish. It's not a part of the entitlement, but of course, each delegation has their unique operations, and then they actually create a list of these spaces due to their needs. So, and then we now know that besides bedrooms, besides actually a place where athletes and officials sleep, we also have all other spaces. And also allotment is working with the spaces. And we're moving to the next slide. So now, keeping in mind that each delegation receives a certain list of spaces, right? So then we're curious, how does actually allotment work? How do we get from the picture on your left, which is from, right? Just a building where you can see balconies. There's nothing besides a beautiful mountain landscape, but you can see just like typical hotel. How does it get from this point to this point where you can see on your right, the building with all national flags hanging out on the balcony? So how does that happen? Where is this process from and to? So this is where we will be speaking about with Paula.
So basically, thank you, Irina. Allotment, what we consider during our process, we plan based on the estimated team sizes. Until the games time, until very close to the games, we don't have the numbers finalized. So we're always working with estimated numbers. Village inventory. We have to consider the spaces, physical spaces we have in the village in order to allocate them and distribute them for what is designated for apartment, for residential units, what is designated for operational spaces. Space planning. So as a part of the space planning, where we're gonna place the furniture, the fixture, the equipment that are available, and what's the stage we need to place those to have enough time to be able to be ready for the time that the athletes will be arriving to the village. And of course, we work together with the NOCs. We work together with the NPCs. So we need to understand what the preference, their priorities, what they're looking for, where is the list of their needs in order for us to also understand and adapt the spaces to best accommodate their delegation. So those are a few of the key points that we consider while we're doing the process of planning the allotment in the Olympic and Paralympic Village.
Yes, thank you, Paula. Those key aspects that we take into consideration are very important, but there is a long list of things we should think about. However, let us speak a bit about the measure bricks. So, sport entries, estimated delegation size. These guys, you can see beautiful faces of Neil and Santi. So I hope like most of you watched the What is Series with the sport entries. So, and now you have a better understanding what these guys do, which is actually a bit of magic for everybody. But now I think we get more information. So we work very close with them. So, and of course, I'm not going to go into details because you have an idea, but what is important for our site? What is important for allotment? So the numbers that we have are not final, right? When do they get final? It's only at the time when a delegation arrives to the village, which is called DRM, Delegation Registration Meeting. Until that moment, we are not having the final numbers of each delegation. So then quotas may change. So basically, for each sport or competition could be different quotas, and its changes can apply up later than we expect. Of course, it's up to each delegation to decide whether they want to bring all the athletes or not. So, and until the last moment, we don't have to know this, and they don't have to say it. There are any other reasons, of course, related to the delegation size, but these are the major issues that allotment is working with, and with this sport entries part, right, with our colleagues from sport entries.
So, but also considering not only about sport entries and the numbers, we also have to consider the spaces. So allotment also focus about the usage and optimizes the usage of the spaces and our inventory. Village inventory, we work really close together with a functional area called VNI, which they are responsible to deal with the developer and all the construction process together with the developer in terms of getting the information, collecting the data that we need for the allotment purpose. Sometimes, and in many cases in past games, the drawings that we receive from the developers not always have exactly the precise information, and then the changes might be during the construction process, and the drawings does not match. We also have some spaces inefficiencies. So such as on our initial drawings, we have some features that were not installed. And in the later stage, the developer decided to have new structures installed on those rooms. And that would not help allotment team to plan the usage of the space properly. Anyway, these are with a few of the cases. We also have access to construction sites. You have to understand each developer company, they have their own restriction. Each country, they have their own restrictions. So you won't be able to have easy access during the construction process to the venue, to the village, to the buildings, in order to be physically planning close to comparing to what is in the drawings and what actually is the reality. Most of the accesses we can have is very close to the conclusion of the village. So it's also one of the things that impacts on our planning. So also, inconsistency on the spaces is something that we have to understand what exactly these spaces can be used for. So those spaces have window. Oh, those spaces have power outlets. How many outlets I have available in this space? Can I place a bed here? Do I have a bathroom, proper equipped bathroom in this location? Can I consider this as a residential apartment, or can I consider this as an operational spaces? So those are the things that impact significantly on how many spaces and our overall inventory in order to allocate the NOCs and NPCs at the village. Of course, it will also have to take into consideration for the Paralympic Games, we have to be considering accessibility. So locations of accessible bathrooms also impacts on our planning.
Yes, brilliant. So now we understand that there are numbers that we don't know until the very last moment, and there is basically an inventory, which we also work with the inventory and adjusting it until the very last moment. So, and now how does those spaces, how does all the furniture where we have like beds, then we have tables, TVs, telephones, everything, how does it appear in those given spaces? Exactly due to the delegation size, exactly due to the number of beds they want to see in this particular bedroom. So this is where we come to this interesting process that's called space planning, where we plan FF&E, so furniture, fixtures, and equipment for the specific space based on its functionality. And this is where we work with our favorite functions as logistics, technology, rate card, venue, infrastructure, and the village sub-departments as facilities. This is a very long, time-consuming, and very detailed process. So we face many challenges, like there's a space limitation. For example, some spaces, they have temporary walls, or they have places where you cannot make the holes in, so you cannot, for example, implement some technology. There's some other limitations due to, I don't know, air conditioning, or again, as Paula mentioned, some windows, some pillars, etc. So there are many space limitations that we have to consider to think what's the functionality of this particular space. Then we should think that it's like two major events, Olympics and Paralympics, happening right up next to each other. So we just have a few days between the events to make the changes that it's needed. And it's not necessarily the same space will be used in the same way for Olympics and Paralympics. So this is a big issue for us to resolve. So also bumping timelines. So NOCs, as you heard, they until the very last moment, they don't know which sports qualified, or they don't know if they didn't decide if they want to bring these athletes or not. So then in the given space, they need to plan the activities for those sports and for themselves. And sometimes they can decide until the very last moment, but we have to bring in the furniture, right? Maybe, Paula, I was thinking maybe we should do like a funny exercise and calculate how many pieces of furniture we have allocated in the past games together. Will be nice to know. So all this furniture is a massive operations for our colleagues from these departments. We should tell them where to bring all these things to. And of course, we want to limit the changes. But from the other side, we have delegations that decide something, but they still can change their mind based on the qualification process, right? So this is like balance. And this is a very big challenge for our team as a space planning, as a part of the space planning process.
But also, thank you, also for the for the NOCs, we have to understand their preference and needs. We know that some NOCs, they work together in collaborations with the national Paralympic committees as well, in order to coordinate and some items that setups they actually plan together. So it's also important for us to understand each country and actually which process they have. The preference of their for each delegation, what exactly it's important for them, what's relevant for them. So the priority is the large spaces that they can set up proper lounges for the athletes, or small rooms that they can have distribution of the operations in small to small. Also, security factors. Some countries, they have their specifications about security levels, and then they consider, they plan their spaces and security in a different way. So it's also relevant for that. And of course, gender split. Overall, the plan is for each NOCs and NPCs to accommodate the delegations based on the gender split within the allocated spaces. So that will be also them planning the distribution for where the athletes and officials will stay, and then considering this gender split within their spaces. So those are the few ones that we take into consideration. Irina, so we have all these things. So I think we should also talk about timeline, right? Because right now we don't know exactly when goes every stage that we are talking about.
Yes, you're right. So basically, now I hope you have a little bit more understanding of all measure bricks of our building of allotment process. And now it's time to give you a little bit more about understanding of the timelines. So if you would think this accommodation process is super short and it's like in the hotel, you just come and you take your key and you go in the room. No, it's absolutely not. It's a very lengthy process, and it takes from 3 to 4 years on average. So as you know, like each village is unique and each developer is unique, country is unique. So we are speaking about average timelines, but they all will be unique for each project. You cannot say like this time you have to have this, or you have to start this exercise. Sometimes there could be factors that you cannot do this. But on average, it's 3 to 4 years. Also, the difference comes from the point of winter or summer Olympic Games, because it's also the events quite different. Winter events have their own challenges, but summer events have like more than 200 countries coming for Olympics, and more than about 200 coming for Paralympics. So about 3 or 4 years before the beginning of the game, so we do the inventory analysis, right? As Paula explained in detail, so what challenges we can face here. So, right, this is where we try to understand what do we have, how many beds we can accommodate, and what kind of spaces we can actually use besides the beds. So in the next step, we have space distribution draft. So this is where we see if all the spaces we can use as medical, office, or storage, or we have to come up with some other solutions and make like a temporary structure for some spaces, for example, for storages. Then it's time to do the first allotment exercise. You understand that the final numbers, we're going to have only a DRM. By the time we have to work with the numbers, we have to do our planning regardless all other factors. And this is where we can use the past games information, and there was our security sport entries team comes to help us with some prediction for the future games, with some sports, additional sports sometimes, for example, like we have in Tokyo, and basically every single game is something is unique. When we're done with the exercise and we feel more or less confident, we kind of can start talking to large delegation. Just for you to understand, the numbers drive allotment, right? So basically, we are putting the big delegation first, and this is the rule, and this is the policy, and this is the way it works, because it's not going to work the opposite. So then we start talking to big delegations to assign them to the particular residential buildings. As 1 year before the games is a big event, which is called Chef de Mission Seminar. So this is a big event for the games and for the host country and host city. It's where all NOCs and NPCs, where they all chefs and or other representatives come to the city to see the venues, to do the venue tours, to see the village, how the construction goes, to also listen to all functional areas presentation to understand how the services will be working. And this is where we also meet delegations, some delegations, and this is where we can share with them the latest update about the village. From that moment, there is a very intense year where we do the space planning, beautiful fitting in furniture and the technology into the given spaces due to the NOC's wishes and due to the entitlements. So, and then we come to the moment of bumping. It's also unique depending on the when village is ready. It's also unique depending on how the process works, but it's really close to the games, the process which is called bumping. And of course, the combination of the process is the delegation registration meeting where we have all countries coming and meeting them, where we finalize the numbers and assign them the bedrooms and assign their spaces. This is like the final step.
Great. So basically, we hear just the timeline for the allotment whole process. So 3 to 4 years, that's what actually normally takes us to plan. And we have some reflections about our work and our planning. So we also have to consider that the village is used for both games, Olympic and Paralympic Games. The accessibility requirements for the Paralympic Games had to be reflected in our inventory, in our spaces. We cannot just basically have some adaptations. We need to have a proper adaptations required to be able to accommodate athletes, impairment residents in the village. So accessible bathrooms, proper equipped, and also ramps installed in some of the locations is also key for our planning. Considering which countries will be allocating also works really well, because you have to remember that part of the cooperation, not only between the internal functionaries and the organizing committee, but also between NOCs and NPCs, knowing some of the countries that work together with each other, they actually will be able to accommodate in the same location. So having the understanding of these countries that cooperate, that work together, we will be able to adapt and then the allotment plan in order for reducing as much as possible movements during transition work. Cooperation, and also a part of the cooperation within the functionaries and coordinations with each other, we also have to consider the flexibility. As the numbers, as we have been talking in this discussion here, we have mentioned that the numbers are estimated numbers. We work really close with estimated numbers. We don't have final numbers until games. So we have to be very flexible in order to adapt for the last minute needs and also change that we are not foreseeing in advance. Although we do have experience, we do work in the games before, but some things are unique for each game. Each village is different. And then this is something that part of the cooperation and working together, not only with the NOCs and organizing committee, but also internally in the organizing committee. Cooperation flexibilities are key for this operation. But also technology. Irina, we still use Excel, right?
I know. I know this could sound very funny, and many countries like ask me and Paula and other colleagues who worked in the allotment, so what program do you use, or do you have any specific button that you press and all countries get allocated? No,
it's not a dream.
It's a dream. Yes. So unfortunately, we're still working in Excel. No, I mean, thank you, Excel, so much for everything you did for us. I think it's an amazing program and it helps us a lot. But think about this: thousands of beds, thousands of tables, and like each country receives like about 30, 45 items, plus they order items through rate card. So basically they just pay for some items that they need, which are not a part of the entitlement. All of that with the inventory of like 20,000 beds. So it's all in the Excel spreadsheet, and you have to adjust and adapt it for each function to use. It's a massive piece of work. So we hope at some point there will be some devices. I actually don't believe that allotment can go 100% on system, so it can be systemized as like this. There's never going to be a magic button, but at least there will be some tools for us to assist in this challenging but at the same super interesting work. So this is like thank you, Paula, for those talking about accessibility and cooperation. So technologies, so we decided it's like the measure, like reflection of the process. Okay, I think this is the end, right?
Yep.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing with us all these different insights and all the considerations that you make when planning village allotment. There's a massive amount to think about. And I don't even think this fully captures the intensity of the work that you do. My goodness, thank you. Well, you actually already answered one of the very interesting questions. We had a question from Ilva who asked about the technology question. So I think you have addressed that it's not that while it will be helpful, you don't think that it can be 100% done, I guess, because of all these different factors that you're considering.
Yes,
So
absolutely. It's not possible, I think, at this moment, but there are so many tools that can be helpful for allotment, so which it can be partially systemized. That could be awesome. Thank you for the question, Ilva.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, there are so many factors to this, and to consider putting in all the variables, it sounds absolutely insane. Brilliant. Let's see. Another question that we have is, here we go. Are there any special considerations that you need to take into account when assigning the location of rooms in the village to different countries or to different territories?
Oh, yep. So, you mean the special consideration? So we take into account a long list of things, and first of all, many countries they all cooperate with each other, right? So it's very important for us. So they provide medical assistance to each other. Sometimes they have doctors or any other staff that they support each other. So this is important. Other countries can just like staying together because they just used to stay together in the past games, and they actually like being neighbors. Some countries are real neighbors on the planet, so they kind of don't want to make any changes to that. They're fine. It's really interesting. There are some factors that, of course, we take into consideration, putting countries together or putting countries separately. And this is a long list, and it actually keeps changing from games to games. So also very quite a challenge for the allotment team.
We also take into consideration, just adding some information besides what Irina already said, on the process of the allotment for the NOCs, we also consider for the NPC. So the countries that work together with the Paralympic team, they also be considered that on the allotment process. So when we are allocating countries, we also take into consideration the accessibility level in order for the countries that cooperate with the Olympic side, they're able to stay in the same location as much as possible. So the transition work is smooth, not only for the organizing committee, but also for the NPCs.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that's a really good point. When you talk about this very long-term vision, which our consideration, which we need to consider since we have both the Olympics and then the Paralympics, and I think it's a theme that runs through all of our planning for the Olympics and then the Paralympics. And we need to look ahead, and that it's not only planning for the Olympics and then planning for the Paralympics, but both of them are integrated processes, and they need to be considered together and with a long-term vision rather than the short term of, okay, one project is finished and then the next project starts.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
This is right.
Yes.
Well, since you shared with us about the changing space needs of NOCs and then NPCs, and how it can change very drastically from the Olympics and then into the Paralympics, even within the same country or territory, can you share with us one of the most, well, I'm sure there are many, but maybe some of the most exciting or the wildest stories you've had when you and your teams needed to react to a change very urgently?
I think I will tell, of course, without naming the NOC. Actually, I don't even remember the NOC. I just like as a part of the space planning, right? We do the assignments. So, for example, we know in this particular space, which is an apartment, there should be like 8 beds, right? And then for Paralympics, there should be like 6 beds, right? And then the funny stories happen when like countries, they do the changes their own, right? So they can move around the furniture. And then logistics comes, and then in order to remove something, but there is no beds, they just call us, but there is no beds. We just like, no, just take 2 beds. No, there is literally 0 beds already.
Oh
So
my goodness.
so this sometimes happens, and in the very like of course it's good for us, so it happens during transition when we sort out, we realize where things are have been removed or something. So, and this is where we can of course sort out before the arrival of NPCs. But these funny things happen when there's one space plan for Olympics and for Paralympics, and in between the magic is happening.
Yeah.
No, this is the worst part, actually, to actually be able to find everything on time enough to be able to be ready. But we always manage, but still, it's very challenging, this part. So,
Yes.
To give an idea of that intensity, can you share with our audience how short is your transition time?
for the last things was 3 days.
3
Actually,
days.
not even full 3 days, but almost 3 days. So you have to imagine from the closing of the Olympic Village for the pre-opening for the Paralympic Village, we have almost 3 days to do this.
My goodness.
Yes.
So you have to check out the teams. You need to make sure that everything and everyone is out. You have to make sure that all the things are in the village still, and then you need to make sure that they're in the right places.
Yes. And the village is clean.
Yes.
It's not entitled for those NPCs are removed. And the rate cut items are in place, and adaptations for the number of beds for the Paralympic Games. Some apartments may be reduced. So some bed extensions. So we also have to consider those things in order to accommodate that. Bed extensions are one of the most challenging.
This is. I think we should ask not how many games you did, like how many transitions you did.
Exactly.
How many transitions did you survive? So this is a good question, and it's Paula, right? Yes, there's so many things, and this is, I think, the most difficult part of the process. It's not even arrivals, not even the first time when the village is open, right? It's super exciting, but the most difficult part, I think, is transition.
Wow. Actually, on that same point, and then after that, I think I have 2 more questions for you. But on that same point, we have a question from our audience about do you have any other anecdotal stories which shows the complicated and detailed nature of your work? So beyond transition, for example.
Oh, so Paula, can you think about something?
Wow.
Oh.
Wow. So
thank you, Stella, for the question.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Stella knows many interesting stories as well, together with us.
We have some unique requests from NOCs and NPCs. Something that it's not a service level that we have guaranteed we have to provide for the Olympics or Paralympic Games. Some specifications of services and room services, something that you would have in a hotel, but not exactly in the village. So this kind of that actually happened, but unfortunately, we cannot go into details on the cases.
Yeah. What comes to my mind, remember, Paula, for example, in one of the games, like we had the spaces and the surface was so different. So the flooring, the walls, because in Legacy, after the games, the spaces will have different purpose, right? And this, like, you have to know which wall is what has which surface, what kind of flooring you have. It's like you have to know exactly the measurements from one plug to another plug. So these all details are captured by allotment team.
Yeah.
This is like
remembering these comments from Irina, we also had some spaces. Based on our developers' drawings that we have received, we didn't have this information. And when we physically went for the inspections, after the construction had finalized, we found that some structures, some like counters, some setups for the legacy usage of space, some temporary jacuzzi installed that was not initially in our drawings.
Yeah, which would be a benefit, but not for the teams, I guess.
It was beautiful, but it wasn't available to use. So it was actually great, but not for the purpose of the games, you know.
Yes, another time you would be so happy to see it, right?
I would love it. It's working and available, right?
Yeah. Goodness. My goodness, this is true. I do remember in Pyeongchang there were some facilities in those rooms that people were not allowed to use. And then, of course, there were some interesting things such as the electronic panels where you can call the elevator, and people got very excited calling the elevator in advance from within the apartments.
Yes, I also remember that.
Yeah.
So if you have a device, you have to explain how to use it.
Exactly.
Mm.
This is a very good, yeah. Instructions are key.
Yeah. Let's see. Definitely more questions here. I have two questions actually about, and more questions coming in. Two questions regarding the Youth Olympic Games. I have one from Gustavo, which addresses that the Youth Olympic Games are now going to have to work with two waves of athletes. So what are the challenges that you foresee for this kind of process?
So two waves, you would face them similar from what you have for the Olympics and Paralympics. So you have a transition time, right? Something that for the Youth Olympics Games didn't initially have, but now you have two waves. You have to have a transition. Not all NOCs will have the same bed entitlement. Not all of them will have athletes competing in sports in the first wave and the second wave. So the transition time, redistributing again the countries in this process of arrivals and departures that impact on the arrival, which means the second year M, and that also would be similar from what we have for the Olympics and Paralympics and the transition time.
Wow. So it's just gotten more complex. I guess the parameters are shifting and changing.
Yes.
Another question about the Youth Olympic Games is actually, could you share any of the unique needs and preferences, perhaps, or are there very unique needs and preferences that the Youth Olympic Games brings to the village? For example, I know that some countries have certain laws that make it impossible for maybe a particular allotment to work for them because the numbers of where the beds are and who can be in the apartment together and so forth.
So for the Youth Olympics, different from the Olympics, the athletes, they are all minors. So they and then some countries by law they cannot have accommodating adults with minors. So some of the things is also the segregation and the process of allotment impacts significantly in our inventory and quantity of apartments we allocate per NOC. Of course, this is based on each country's law, but overall, minors and adults, they are not accommodated in the same apartment. So that's something that we have to consider when we're doing allotment for the Youth Olympic Games.
Yeah.
The difference is also, but also not only that, but the Youth Olympic Games, something that's a bit different from the Olympics is that NOCs don't have the same level of spaces that they have for the Olympics. So they don't have the operational spaces that we explained during our presentations. For the Youth Olympics, NOCs, they receive the residential units, of course. They can use these residential units for the purpose of their needs of medical office, but this is not part of their entitlement for space that you different from the Olympic Games that they have.
Yes.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. It's a different sort of complexity, I guess, for the Youth Olympic Games.
Yes, it's different compared to the Olympics, yes.
Yeah. Gustavo is busy with questions. So, oops, wrong one. Here we go. There you are. So, Gustavo would like to ask about the Oceania countries who work as a collective when operating in the village. Do you actually think that these kind of cooperative measures do bring them benefits?
Yes. They benefit because some of them were able to have some information and plan and some of their operations, and then also for us in terms of planning the allotment allows us to have better understanding what their needs are, and the collaboration among them helps us also to define better the usage of their spaces.
Yes, absolutely. Paula is right. And in general, I think cooperation brings only positive things in our life. And in Oceania, ecolocation as well. So, yes, that works for them, first of all, and for us. This is important.
They work in collaboration, but it's like both sides, right? So they also compromise some of their entitlements in order to have this beneficial side of collaboration and receiving enough information in advance. So it's like in both ways that we work with them and they work with us.
Great. And let's see, one last question here from Yo, who is curious to understand, as you look forward and as you move forward to different games, what are some of the improvements from an Olympic or Paralympic village or youth Olympic village, or the allotment perspective that you could see for the future?
I can see increase of collaboration among NOCs, different NOCs, right? Based on the cultural similarities, we already have countries that work together as Oceania, small Oceanian countries. They already work together, but we foreseen that would be increasing on collaborations because they could optimize the usage of their spaces for a different purpose, which will provide better support for the athletes. So that is one of the things I see. Irina, do you have any?
Oh, yes, there are many, but what I can think about now is probably smart solutions for the village as itself. I mean, like is a legacy, right? So how it can be utilized afterwards, if it's a new construction, or how smartly to use the venue which exists and how adjust it and adopt. This is also could be good for the future, and also smart decision about the furniture, because if you think about the number of beds you have to purchase, the number of things you have to purchase for the village to operate for this time, which is not that's not a long time in the end, right? That smart solutions about finding like a pieces of furniture technology that actually, like a wardrobe, for example, which is in Rio was a wardrobe which was not made of wood or made of plastic or made of metal. It was made of fabric.
Yeah.
So, right, it was easy to put, easy to fold. So, I mean, these smart solutions are also, there's a good future for the games, which allotment and village can bring into the games.
But also, like talking about furniture, you have to consider that the future after the games, you have to have a purpose for them. So in the Youth Olympics, for instance, we had a donation. We had the purpose of the furnitures were used as a donation for how do you call it in English? So they were all donated. It was not something that was actually not used or discarded.
Left behind. Yeah.
They were actually they had a purpose after that. So that was actually positive results for the games, and then how to see the games after it. So you have to think about the games during the games and providing the service to the athletes, of course, but you also have to think about the legacy and what these games will leave to the cities that host the games and the value they add for those countries.
Yes, exactly. It's something which super important. I think it's one of the like most important things that the games actually bring into the world. Is like the legacy in all the aspects.
Yeah, and then the village is one of the big venues. Yeah, that you have everybody living together at the same time. That location, what you have to provide services, you have to provide a furniture and daily 24 hours operation. So you have to make sure that everything is working properly. So this is a very big venue that you have to consider. And how is the venue after the games? What's the legacy that left for the city after the games? So this is crucial. So we have a successful result in the Youth Olympics in Buenos Aires. That was a successful result for the village. They sold the apartments, and then for different for some levels of the classes, and then actually the furniture was most of them donated, which is actually a very positive result and successful, in my opinion, for the games after the games.
Yeah. Those are really good points. Thank you. Oh, goodness. Actually, there are two more questions. I think they're really interesting questions. Are you okay that we address these questions?
Which question?
I don't know.
I don't know the question.
We do have a question regarding COVID-19. And the question here is, how do you think that this can change the games in the Olympic Village?
So I think COVID-19 will definitely change like everything as it is accommodation, as it is sanitary norms, as there are many people in one location, it definitely will have a big impact. But what is important to understand, because we are still in the process to understand how it will impact. And I think next year, maybe we can have one more session actually to brief and to see what actually changes and what impact the COVID had for the games we're going to happen next year in Tokyo. So it's really sensitive topic in this moment, and it's quite hard to say, but there will be definitely changes. But the only thing we need to understand that the changes should be efficient, right? So we need to understand that in the end, it was things that we did, they were implemented and they worked. So if we realize, that could be nice to have us one more session next year.
Yeah, after the games. After the games in Tokyo, and then we can have another session to actually understand what was the overall impacts for COVID-19 and not only the Olympic Village, but overall Olympic Games.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting to understand not only for the village, of course, the village is a big venue and then 24 hours operations impact significantly, but also for the games itself and what was changed and what will be reflected in the future games.
Yes, I think I do agree. I think we should actually come back again and discuss what our learnings were and what, moving forward, what our best practices could be. Of course, recognizing that too might change and will continue to change. As you mentioned very correctly, both of you, every single games is different. Every country is different. Your context keeps changing. So you never have a fixed set of rules, but rather a set of principles that you work by. And I agree, the reality is with COVID-19, we are entering new territory. We're changing a lot of our norms and a lot of our habits, our assumptions and our practices. So we can prepare to the best of our ability based on what best practices we already have, but to understand the true impact and the efficiency, the efficacy of our actions would definitely take much, much more time. And the other great question would be from Stella, who wants to follow up on Neo's question about any innovations you are aware of that we would have seen if the Tokyo Games had happened this year. Or is there something that we should wait and see?
Yes.
I think we should wait for the games to happen and you'll see all the innovations going in place and active.
Brilliant. So watch this space, actually. Excellent. It's true. With all the games being different, and again, the context in Tokyo being different, a fully very vibrant and active city, I'm very excited and curious to hear from you after the games are over, what experiences you had and what principles you applied and how they were applied for the games. But so, let's make a date for next year.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, with champagne. Agree.
November. We will do our 1 year to go soon, so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, thank you very much. I think there are a few words that I picked up from your entire session today that I really appreciated. You spoke about cooperation, and I think that's a huge, huge, huge word. Cooperation should be one of the underpinning pillars or foundations of all that we do in the games. Cooperation to achieve this common vision. Understanding, of course, that the cooperation is not only internally, as your team has to do, all of your teams have to do within the organizing committee itself with multiple functional areas and be incredibly flexible with that cooperation, but also outside of that in your cooperation with our clients. So while considering their needs and considering their changing needs, which then brings me to your next key word, I think, which is adaptability. And let's make that 2 words, adaptability and flexibility to the changing needs of your NOCs, whether it's and NPCs, but whether it's from NOC to NPC or within that delegation itself, because of changing numbers all the way up to the DRMs or changing circumstances, say, for example, an outbreak of illness, which we have seen at various games, or with our concern, for example, for COVID-19, I'm sure that will change some of your planning as well. And I do believe if you ever want to find a a powerful and resilient team, a team that represents the qualities of resilience, you only need to look at the Village Allotment team to find this. I really believe so. Genuinely, I think that they are the absolute calm in the storm when at least from the perspective of NCS, when we are working with our clients and then, everything is going on at the same time. But then the Village Allotment team is very calmly sitting there going, hi, yes, we will fix this, we can help you. And it's never, oh, this is a problem. It's always, okay, let's see how we can fix this. Okay, let's see how we can compromise. How can we value add to the needs of our NOCs and NPCs, but also, to the organizing committee and to the future of these facilities that we are currently managing, but that we will then hand on. So, yes, thank you very much again for sharing all of your insights, and I look forward to speaking with you again next year. And thank you everyone in our audience for your participation, for your engagement, and stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank
Ciao,
you
everyone.
so much. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.